He who masters silence rules more than he who shouts. For silence is the invisible crown that transforms presence into power. Have you ever noticed how people talk? Talking endlessly, as if each word were a building block in building their own authority. But have you ever asked yourself, do too many words demonstrate power or betray weakness? Stop for a moment and think. Were the most feared men in history remembered for their long speeches or for the silence that preceded a gesture? How many times have you sat in a room and listened to someone speak endlessly and instead of respect, felt impatience or even contempt? Why does the silence of a few cause more discomfort than the speaking of many? Since ancient times, people have associated speaking with dominance. Rhetoric, speeches, eloquence, all of these were considered proof of intelligence and superiority. But Machiavelli, with his cold, uneasy gaze, pointed to a different reality. The more you speak, the more you expose yourself. The more words you utter, the more you reveal your vulnerability. And that's precisely what few dare to admit. Those who talk too much open a window to themselves. They reveal insecurities. They divulge unfiltered thoughts. They expose emotions that would otherwise remain hidden. Those who master silence, on the other hand, become enigmas, an impenetrable wall, a void that attracts the imagination and fear of others. Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt small in front of someone who said almost nothing? Think of a person who could disarm an entire room with just a look. There was no need to explain, justify, or lecture. Their presence spoke louder than any words. Imagine the following scene. Two people in conflict. One shouts, explains, wrestles with words, trying to convince, to justify himself. The other remains silent. Who seems stronger? Who seems in control? This contrast reveals the essence of Machiavellian power. Silence is not empty. It is a meaningful space. It forces others to project their own fears, their own doubts, their own guilt. While the speaker exhausts himself with sentences, the silent one conserves energy and becomes an inscrutable enigma. Have you ever felt this discomfort? Have you ever faced someone who remained silent while you were speaking? Suddenly, every word that came out of your mouth felt like a mistake, an unnecessary exposure. It's as if the silence was a merciless mirror reflecting your fear, your weaknesses, and your need for recognition. And in that moment, without even realizing it, you had already lost the game. The truth is harsh. People talk too much because they're afraid of silence, and they're afraid of silence because they know deep down they're not present enough to tolerate silence. Ask yourself, if you walked into a room today and chose to remain silent, what would happen? Would people wait for your words, or would they simply ignore your brevity? That's the difference between the weak and the strong. The weak believe they have to fill every gap with explanations. The strong know they don't have to justify anything. Their mere presence inspires respect. How often have you fallen into the trap of explaining yourself too much? How many times have you tried to convince, but deep down, you knew you were betraying yourself? It's precisely in this excess that weakness reveals itself. Those who try to convince with too many words end up appearing desperate, and desperate people are never respected. Silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's a psychological force. Silence can be more oppressive than shouting. It can exert more pressure than speaking. It can create more fear than an explicit threat. Why? Because people fear the unknown, and silence is the unknown in its purest form. If you don't speak, the other person doesn't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're feeling. And uncertainty always creates more fear than certainty. Think of leaders, historical figures, and people who shaped generations. They weren't remembered for their endless babble. They were remembered for the moments when they spoke little, but the little they did say reverberated like a law. And therein lies the key. Words lose their value when they are plentiful, but they become valuable when they are rare. So ask yourself again, do you want to be remembered as someone who talked endlessly, or as someone whose silence left its mark on the world around them? Do you want to be recognized as someone who demands respect through justification, or as someone who demands respect without even opening their mouth? This is the first Machiavellian lesson. They talk too much, and that's precisely why they're weak. And when you understand this, you begin to see the world differently. Anyone who talks too much seems transparent, predictable, vulnerable. Every overly long justification becomes a sign of insecurity. Every unnecessary word becomes an involuntary confession. You begin to realize that most people are at the mercy of their own tongues. And by recognizing this, you discover the path to a new form of power, the power that grows from silence. But be careful. Make no mistake. Silence alone isn't enough. It's only the first step. Empty silence can be mistaken for absence, weakness, or fear. You must understand how to transform silence into presence. You must know when to speak, and how a single word can be more devastating than 1,000 sentences. If this reflection has resonated with you, and you've asked yourself these questions at some point, then you know you're facing something greater. Silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the construction of a power that few understand, but everyone feels. Like this video, leave a comment, even anonymously, because your opinion counts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation of this journey. The next chapter will show you how to transform silence into a weapon of absolute domination. Silence is uncomfortable. It weighs more heavily than any words. It creates a void that fills with tension, a space in which others are forced to reveal their true selves. The first lesson was to recognize that talking too much reveals weakness. The second was to understand that silence is not an absence. It is presence. A presence that controls, that exerts pressure, that dominates. Think of a work meeting. Everyone is talking at once, trying to demonstrate their competence. Some are repeating statistics. Others are vying for attention with rehearsed phrases. The room fills with noise, but there is someone who remains silent. This isn't passivity, it's observation. Eyes scan every gesture, every nervousness. While others strain to appear important, the silent one becomes the most conspicuous person in the room. When they finally decide to speak, every word becomes law. Those who explain themselves too extensively lose authority. Those who wait silently gain it. This is the psychological power of silence. It transforms the environment into a stage on which the speaker presents himself and gives himself away, while the silent one observes coolly and calmly. This is not difficult to see. In a family, for example, the person who enjoys the greatest respect is usually the one who speaks the least. The person who doesn't have to repeat orders or shout to be heard. As soon as someone opens their mouth, everyone pays attention. The father who speaks little but whose firm voice never leaves any room for doubt. The mother who doesn't have to raise her voice to say everything in the silence around her. It is the same in friendships. The friend who despairs of explanations, who cannot bear to be misunderstood, always ends up in a position of weakness. The other, who limits himself to listening, who observes quietly and chooses carefully when to speak, becomes the reference point for the group. Silence is a weapon because it creates discomfort. Those who talk too much try to fill the void with justifications. Those who master silence allow others to sink into their own insecurity. Imagine a social confrontation, a heated public debate. One person becomes agitated, loses control, and raises their voice. The crowd watches, but the other person remains silent, simply staring, unblinking, with an unreadable expression. Little by little, the audience too senses the agitated speaker's shame. Their words sound increasingly hollow, more desperate. The other person's silence swallows them up. There's no need to shout. The silence has already vanquished them. How often in everyday life have you found yourself over-explaining yourself, justifying yourself to a boss who had essentially already made a decision, proving something to family members who weren't even ready for dialogue, responding to criticism from friends who only wanted to provoke? Every word felt like a noose around your neck, and when you were finished speaking, you realized you hadn't gained anything. On the contrary, you had lost presence. Silence is an invisible fortress, and only those strong enough to inhabit this fortress without fear understand its true power. Silence is uncomfortable for the weak because it forces them to confront their inner emptiness. And from this emptiness arise fears, insecurities, and the need for recognition. But for the strong, silence is not emptiness. It is territory. It is a trench. It is absolute domination. Consider the behavior of wild animals. A predator never announces its presence with unnecessary noise. It observes, analyzes, and waits for the right moment. Fearful prey, on the other hand, sends out signals that reveal their position, their panic, and their weakness. Silence is a power instinct embedded in nature. Those who master silence resemble predators. Calm, composed, alert, always ready, yet without wasting energy. Now imagine a situation at work. The boss announces a sudden change. Everyone reacts immediately. Comments, complaints, doubts, nervousness. Some even try to flatter with quick, insistent words. But there is one employee who remains silent. He shows no desperation. He isn't in a hurry. This silence is disturbing because the boss doesn't know what he's thinking, and his colleagues don't know whose side he's on. This man becomes dangerous. It's impossible to manipulate him, to predict his reaction. And that's precisely why, paradoxically, he enjoys the greatest respect. The effect is the same in the family. Those who react too hastily in domestic disputes almost always lose. But those who watch in silence disarm their opponent. In the face of silence, shouting becomes ridiculous. It's like a blow to the air, and everyone realizes that those who remained silent were not defeated. They simply didn't humiliate themselves. The same thing happens in friendships. Those who talk too much and try to justify their position end up being worn down, misunderstood, and seen as fragile. But the friend who doesn't feel the need to prove anything ends up being the one who inspires the most trust. The group respects them not for what they say, but for what they don't have to say. Silence is the pause that makes the words of others lose their power. It is the space that transforms every justification into meaningless noise. It is the moment when everyone realizes that those who talk too much are begging for validation, while those who don't speak already have what others seek, respect. And here comes the unexpected twist. Silence isn't just a defense. It can be an attack. It can be more destructive than a sharp retort. It can put the other person at a disadvantage, unsettle them, and leave them trapped in their own thoughts. Imagine someone trying to provoke you in public. They're waiting for your reaction, wanting to see your anger, provoke a response. But you remain silent. The provocateur persists, escalates the tone, forces the situation, and the longer you remain silent, the smaller they appear. The audience starts laughing at them, not at you. They lose. You win. How many executives, bosses, friends, parents, wives, or husbands could have avoided disasters if they had learned to keep their mouths shut? How many pointless arguments could have been won by remaining silent? How many reputations could have been preserved if they hadn't spoken up at the wrong time? The truth is, silence works. It creates presence. It makes others bow, even if they don't want to admit it. Silence creates doubt, and doubt creates respect. You may not say anything, but the other person is imagining everything. They project onto you the strength they don't see themselves. And it is this projection that gives you power. Now think about your life. How many times have you lost respect because you talked too much? How many times has someone walked away because your words sounded too rushed? How many times have you revealed your strategy, your vulnerability, your weakness, simply because you couldn't bear to remain silent? If it hurts to admit this, it's because you've already understood. It's time for a change. Silence is a weapon, but like any weapon, it must be used wisely. Empty silence can come across as cowardice. Calculated silence is presence. Silence, supported by a steady gaze, an upright posture, and a steady body, is power. Silence combined with a few well-aimed words is dominance. The next time you're faced with an attack, provocation, or social pressure, remember, your strength lies not in reacting immediately. Your strength lies in not giving the other person what they want. They want your reaction, your haste, your fear. Give them peace. Let them exhaust themselves. And when they finally decide to speak, your words carry the weight of a command. And here we come to the central point of this section. Silence is not absence, but presence. It is not weakness, it is power. It is not passivity, it is strategy. Those who master silence will never be mastered. Those who fear it will always be prisoners of their own language. If this sounds familiar and you've ever realized you've fallen into the trap of word choice, then it's time to act differently. This is how transformation begins. Like this video, leave your comment, even anonymously, because your opinion strengthens this community, and subscribe to the channel to follow the next episodes. Next, you'll learn why those who talk too much always end up revealing more than they'd like, and how a single word, spoken at the right moment, can bring down even the loudest enemy. Words are like blunt swords. They cut little, but they make noise. Silence, on the other hand, is a sharp blade that needn't be exposed to be feared. In the third stage of this journey, it's not enough to simply understand silence as a presence. It's necessary to reveal its essence as a symbol. For true power lies not only in silence, but in what silence represents. Silence can be interpreted as mystery, as threat, as indifference, or as superiority. It takes the form that others project onto you, and that's precisely why it's so devastating. Think of historical figures. How many generals, rulers, or leaders are remembered not for their long speeches, but for their ability to turn a pause into a command? Silence is a symbol. When a king enters a room, he doesn't need to shout. His presence is already speech. His gestures are already commands. Even the silence between two sentences can carry more weight than the entire speech of an ordinary person. The absence of words becomes an aura. It is the invisible symbol that surrounds him, constructed not by sounds, but by the effect of the unspoken. Symbols of silence also appear in everyday life. In the workplace, the person who doesn't react too hastily to provocations enjoys the greatest respect. In a circle of friends, a friend who observes more than he speaks is considered wise, even if he has never offered advice. In the family, a father or mother who remains silent in the face of other family members' hysteria is perceived as stern and imposing. Silence, when combined with presence, becomes an invisible uniform, a hidden crown, a cloak of authority. And what about you? If you were to enter a room right now and not say a single word, would you be respected or ignored? Would your silence be interpreted as strength or absence? The power of silence doesn't come by itself. It must be supported by accompanying symbols: the unwavering gaze, the unyielding posture, the leisurely waiting. Together, these elements transform silence into a statement of authority. Without them, silence can be confused with submission. This is why the silence of the weak bothers no one, while the silence of the strong is almost unbearable. For it is not just silence. It is a symbol. It is language. It is a sign. Consider human behavior. In heated discussions, there's always someone who shouts the loudest. But amidst the commotion, it's rarely noticed that everyone ends up paying attention to the reaction of the only person who hasn't yet spoken. It's as if true power is measured not by the number of words, but by the ability to endure silence. And when that someone finally speaks, the entire room bows in awe. Would you have the patience to wait for the right moment? Or would you give in to the fear of having to respond? If you spoke your words after long moments of silence, would they carry weight, or would they go unnoticed like the others? The speaker's vulnerability lies in the fact that their words reveal more than they realize. Overly justifying themselves reveals guilt. Rushing to explain too quickly demonstrates fear. Constantly asserting themselves reveals insecurity. Those who speak little and choose the right moment to act project inevitability. Their words are not arguments, but commands. There's no room for a retort, because the silence that precedes them has already prepared the ground. In everyday life, this happens almost invisibly. Think of the colleague who talks too much in meetings. They try to dominate and convince, but the harder they try, the more they lose credibility. Compare that to the colleague who only speaks at the end in a calm, measured voice. They are the one who sets the final direction because everyone is already fed up with the previous noise. Silence transforms their speech into a solution. Could you wait long enough for your words to have the desired effect? Or would your fear cause you to give up too soon and waste your energy? Silence can also be a trap for the other person. Those who talk too much get lost in contradictions. Those who insist on filling every gap become predictable. Silence forces the opponent to reveal themselves. It's like playing chess without moving a piece. The other person fidgets around, trying to anticipate your moves, but you remain immobile. They tire before the game even begins. This is the cold logic of domination. Those who talk less control more. But there's one detail that many people aren't aware of. Silence can also become a mask. You can remain silent, and thereby allow others to project characteristics onto you that may not even exist. People fear what they don't understand. They respect what they can't decipher. Silence creates space for imagination, and the imagination of others is always more powerful than any of your own words. If you were to remain silent in the face of an accusation today, would you be seen as guilty or as someone beyond reproach? Would your actions uphold the authority of your silence or make you appear cowardly? Silence is a relentless test. It reveals the fragility of others and one's own. It's not enough to simply remain silent. One must endure the silence steadfastly. It's like staring into someone's eyes without blinking, without looking away. Silence is unbearable for the unprepared, but becomes a delight for those who understand the game, because every second of silence increases the pressure on the other, as if time rests solely on them. Think about the trials throughout history. How many defendants have talked too much and condemned themselves with their own words? And how many, through their silence, raised questions that were never answered? Silence can absolve, it can condemn, and most impressively, it can build a lasting reputation. Could you remain silent when everyone demands your voice? Or would you give in to the temptation to explain yourself, to justify yourself, to ease the pressure? Power lies not only in what one says, but also in what one doesn't say. Every prolonged silence is a strategic decision. Every charged pause is an invisible declaration. Every omitted word is a blow that doesn't need to be delivered to be felt. Silence creates symbols, and symbols command. We've reached a point where we can no longer ignore it. Speaking less doesn't mean having less power. It means possessing more. Because every word you hold back increases the weight of the next one you release. It's as if every syllable were gold, and those who waste it become poor compared to those who know how to save. And here's the final insight. Silence isn't just a resource, it's the raw material of respect. It shapes the space so that your presence is perceived as inevitable. It turns your image into a symbol. It determines whether you'll be remembered as a passing noise or as an unassailable authority. And now I ask you directly, if someone tries to provoke a reaction, will you be the one who talks too much and loses everything? Or will you be the one who remains silent, observes, and lets the world bend to your silence? If this reflection has touched you and you've felt the significance of this truth in your life at some point, then you know what you need to do. Continue this journey with us. Like this video, leave your comment, even anonymously, because your silence speaks volumes, and subscribe to the channel, because the next step will show you how you can transform a single word, spoken at the right moment, into a fatal blow against any opponent. The power of a single word. It sounds too simple, yet throughout history, this is precisely what has distinguished ordinary people from those who became legends. Respect was never achieved through excess, but by the moment when someone knew how to transform silence into preparation, and at the right moment, utter a word that echoed like a command. Strength lies not in talking a lot, but in saying something the world cannot ignore. Since ancient times, this truth has been repeated as a silent law that has guided leaders, kings, generals, and even anonymous individuals who, in crucial situations, made a name for themselves by the way they dominated the space between silence and speech. Think of Julius Caesar. It wasn't the sheer number of his words that made him unforgettable, but their precision. Veni, vidi, vici. 3 words. No long speech, no attempt to justify his victory. Just one short sentence, remembered to this day. He understood that too much talk diminishes impact. By summing up his victory in 3 words, he transformed a military tale into an eternal symbol. This gave him an aura of inevitability. The world remembered not what he declared, but the way he summarized his victories in sentences that endured for centuries. Another example is Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who mastered not only the battlefield, but also the psychology of the masses. Time and again, he approached his soldiers to utter a single, definite sentence, then quickly retreated into silence. The effect was devastating. He didn't need fiery speeches to win hearts. A clear strategic statement was enough, which the entire army repeated as absolute truth. Napoleon understood that a general shouldn't waste words. He knew that every silence between orders further encouraged obedience, because it gave soldiers space to complete the message with their imaginations. It's not just military personnel or emperors who demonstrate this. Even in the most unlikely, banal, everyday situations, this pattern repeats itself. How often, in a group of friends, is the quietest person the one everyone is expecting to hear? It doesn't matter if they utter a banal sentence. The mere fact that they have waited in silence gives their words more weight. Think of work meetings. The employee who rushes to express their opinion on every question often becomes invisible. However, someone who remains silent, waits, observes, and finally utters a short, direct sentence is immediately perceived as a natural leader, even without position. This is no coincidence, but social psychology. The human group always attributes more authority to those who speak their minds, because silence creates expectations, and expectations mean power. This play with symbols is ancient and universal. Even in diplomacy, we see how control of speech determines destiny. During the Cold War, a single statement by a politician could move markets and paralyze countries. Yet, the most unforgettable moments were not the long speeches, but the enigmatic sentences surrounded by silence that held the whole world in suspense. Kennedy, Khrushchev, Churchill, they all knew that a strong word is worth 1,000 justifications. That's precisely what creates respect, the impression of inevitability. Those who speak little appear confident. Those who talk too much appear desperate. Now apply this idea to your life. When someone challenges you at work, are you the one who responds immediately and tries to justify their point of view? Or are you the one who knows how to wait, endures the silence, and only speaks when everyone is already listening attentively? When a fight breaks out in the family, do you shout, contributing to the chaos? Or are you the one who remains silent until a single sentence ends the debate? When you are provoked among friends, do you react impulsively and let the other person win? Or do you control the situation and allow the uncomfortable silence to negate the provocation? The power of a single word is within everyone's reach, but few have the discipline to use it. This phenomenon can even be observed in popular culture. Legendary figures in film and literature almost always speak little. It's their silence, their gaze, their gestures that create an aura. When they finally speak, they don't have to shout. One sentence is enough. This isn't just art, it reflects reality. People respect symbols more than arguments, and silence followed by a single apt word is the greatest symbol of authority there can be. This is the central point of this section. Respect is a game of symbols, and symbols don't need to be explained. What maintains authority isn't long justifications, but the ability to speak little and yet be heard as if one had spoken much. Those who learn to use silence as preparation and speaking as the final blow become invincible. The world doesn't bow down before those who talk too much. The world bows down before those who know how to transform their presence into a mystery and their speech into a sentence. And here is the question that cannot be avoided. When it is your turn to be tested, will you be remembered as the one who begged for respect with endless words, or as the one who silenced everyone with a single sentence? If this reflection has given you food for thought, and you've ever felt the significance of transforming silence into symbols and words into commands, then join us on this journey. Like this video, leave your comment, even if it's short or anonymous, and subscribe to the channel, because in the next chapter, we'll reveal why too many words always lead to weakness, and how to avoid falling into the trap that has ruined kings, leaders, and ordinary people throughout history. Excess is always a betrayal. Those who talk too much believe they are strengthening themselves, but in reality, they are destroying themselves with every word. The desperate attempt to convince, justify, and explain everything is a poison that undermines authority. Respect comes not from abundance, but from scarcity, and what is rare is always worth more. Excessive words are like copper coins thrown onto the street. They make noise, but no one pays attention. A rare sentence spoken at the right time is like gold. Everyone stops and looks. In real life, we see this every day. In the workplace, the employee who takes over the entire meeting room with their opinions is easily forgotten. Their ideas become blurred and lose their impact. But the colleague who speaks little, who waits, who quietly observes, is the one who commands attention. As soon as they open their mouth, everyone stops and listens. The contrast between silence and speaking creates impact. Excess is tiring. Minimalism dominates. And don't think this is limited to meetings or formal discussions. In friendships, those who talk too much and reveal everything about themselves make themselves vulnerable. Their secrets are revealed, their feelings are exposed, their weaknesses can easily be exploited. A friend who talks little becomes enigmatic. Everyone wants to know what they're thinking, everyone asks for their opinion. Secrecy builds respect, excess destroys it. It's the same in the family. In an argument, the person who shouts the loudest is usually the least right. Those who talk too much lose control, and their persistence becomes a sign of weakness. But those who remain silent and allow themselves to be worn down by others maintain their dignity. If they decide to speak, they don't have to shout. One sentence is enough to end the argument. Excess is weakness, for it betrays fear, and fear is always a sign of insecurity. Those who can't stand silence show the world that they don't trust themselves. And if you don't trust yourself, why should others? Why should they respect you? Respect can't be begged or pleaded for. It is enforced by firmness, self-control, and a presence that doesn't need noise. Imagine a scene of social conflict. One man accuses another in public. One man talks incessantly, gesticulating and trying to convince the crowd. The other remains calm, simply observing and not reacting hastily. Gradually, the balance shifts. The accuser, previously dominant, appears desperate. The other man's silence consumes him, and every further word sounds desperate. The audience notices. Noise gives way to silence. Excess gives way to restraint. Have you ever found yourself in this situation? Have you ever given yourself away by talking too much? Have you ever felt like your credibility has dwindled after a long speech? That's the price of excess. It's the trap almost everyone falls into. And that's precisely why the strong come across differently. They don't have to talk. They don't have to explain themselves. Their strength lies in not struggling with justifications. The truth is, those who talk too much become predictable. Every revealed detail is a weapon for the enemy. Every long sentence offers an opportunity for contradiction. Every timid explanation is an admission of weakness. Those who remain silent control the game. Silence is unpredictable, and unpredictability always inspires respect and fear. But there's something even more dangerous. Excesses not only weaken, they also make people look ridiculous. Those who continue to talk when they should have stopped lose all authority. This is the politician who overvalues themselves and appears guilty. This is the boss who tries to gain respect through excessive talk and ends up being seen as empty. This is the friend who has to say and reveal more and more and ends up being treated as someone without a filter, without power, without secrets. Respect develops when people realize you can speak, but don't. When they realize you control what you reveal and what you keep to yourself. When they understand that your words are rare and therefore valuable. Excess destroys this power. It dilutes your presence, weakens your symbol, and undermines your image. And this is precisely where the game becomes brutal. The weak don't realize they are destroying themselves. They think they are convincing others through exaggeration, but in reality, they are begging for attention. And whoever begs for attention has already lost. The strong don't beg. The strong remain silent. The strong observe. The strong wait. And when they decide to speak, they speak little, but enough to change everything. Would you endure the discomfort of silence? Or would you give in to fear and fill the space with words that belittle you? That's the difference between those who respect and those who are respected, between those who rule and those who obey, between those who tread water and those who let themselves be carried away by it. We have reached the limit of tension. Excessive words always lead to weakness. Silence and restraint always lead to strength. Those who believe the opposite remain prisoners of noise. But those who learn this lesson realize that every withheld word represents power, and every precisely chosen word is a surefire blow. And when you understand that, when at some point on this journey, you realize how much excess has cost you in your life, then you'll be ready to move on. The next step will reveal to you the final lesson that separates those who are forever ignored from those who will never be forgotten. Like this video, leave your comment, even if it's just a line, and subscribe now. For the silence that will come will be louder than any scream. The silence that permeated this entire journey is not just a concept, not just history, not just reflection. It is practice. And here, at the final point, everything must become applicable. For there is no point in intellectually understanding the power of silence, symbols, and presence if it is not translated into daily change. True respect arises not from abstract ideas, but from visible actions that shape the perceptions of others. And that is precisely what you will take away from this final part. How to transform presence into authority. How to transform restraint into respect. How to transform every gesture and every word into a demonstration of power. The first step is posture. The body speaks before the mouth. You can remain silent, but if your posture is weak, slouched, or hesitant, silence will be interpreted as cowardice. Therefore, learn to stand firmly, shoulders straight, gaze straight, movements restrained. It's not about theatrics, but about consistency. Strong people don't get unnecessarily excited. Body control confers mind control. Try entering a room and take your time. Walk calmly and take your seat, without exaggeration, quite naturally. You don't have to say anything. Everyone will notice your presence. This is the first practical application. Transform your body into a symbol. The second step is conscious silence. It's not about always being silent, but knowing when to be silent. Most people speak to ease their own anxiety. Avoid that. Endure the discomfort for a few seconds before answering. Endure the pause. This small discipline changes everything because it shows that you are not guided by immediate emotions. At work, if someone tries to pressure you with a difficult question, don't answer immediately. Pause. Look. Think. This waiting unsettles the other person, who has been expecting your haste. In family, don't shout during heated discussions. Remain silent until the right moment arrives. With friends, don't react with hasty irony when provoked. Wait. Silence is an invisible sword. Use it as such. The third step is to use words as symbols. Forget the idea of convincing others through excessive explanations. Use short, direct, non-negotiable sentences. Every word must carry weight. If everyone talks a lot, be the one who says little. If everyone justifies themselves, be the one who explains themselves. This difference immediately changes perceptions. The boss who rants endlessly loses attention. The one who says little gains respect. The father who yells is ignored. The one who speaks calmly and firmly is obeyed. The friend who talks too much loses credibility. The one who speaks little but precisely is consulted. Practice shortening your sentences. Eliminate useless adjectives. Trim out justifications and say only the essentials. This way, your words will be worth their weight in gold, not noise. The fourth step is to learn to maintain symbols. Respect is always conveyed through visible signs that require no explanation. The way you dress, your appearance, the position you occupy, the silence you maintain. All these are symbols. If you speak little but look directly into people's eyes, it is a sign of firmness. If you remain silent when provoked but hold your body erect, it is a sign of authority. If you hesitate for a few seconds before reacting, it is a sign of control. People don't respect your intentions, they respect the symbols you project. Make sure every gesture is consistent with the image you want to build. These four practices, posture, silence, word, and symbol, combine into a single presence. And it is presence that transforms an ordinary person into a reference. One who masters their presence needs not seek respect. Respect finds it. People adjust their tone in their presence, mind their words in their presence, wait for their reaction before they act. None of this happens by chance. It happens because silence, posture, and the rare word have created an aura and established territory. The world cannot resist the presence of a person who has learned to master themselves. Now think about your own life. At work, are you the one who talks too much, trying to be heard? Or the one who chooses the right moment to speak? At home, do you allow yourself to be drawn into meaningless discussions? Or are you the one who calmly and firmly maintains order? Do you overexpose yourself among friends? Or do you keep the secret that makes them seek you out? In social interactions, do you exhaust yourself in arguments? Or do you let silence and a single gesture speak for themselves? In such situations, respect is put to the test. Not in prepared speeches, but in the improvisation of everyday life. And here's the practical part. Start today. Don't wait for a big opportunity. Try it tomorrow, in the next conversation. When someone asks you a question, wait a few seconds before answering. If you feel like you have to explain too much, keep it brief. If you feel like justifying yourself, stop. If you notice yourself gesticulating too much, reduce your movements. Small, repeated actions send powerful signals. And powerful signals create respect. The mistake many make is believing that respect is a given. Respect must be built. Respect doesn't come from pleasing others, but from imposing. And imposing doesn't mean shouting, banging on the table, or showing anger. It's about mastering your body, your language, your silence. You become impenetrable, unattainable, unshakable. Those who learn this don't need to ask for anything. Those who master it don't need to compete. Others naturally give in because presence is irresistible. The great turning point is the realization that fragility lies not in silence, but in excess. The world is full of speakers who are never heard, and silent ones who are never forgotten. The difference between the two lies in discipline. Respect isn't earned in a day. It's earned in each moment by choosing restraint over excess, a firm gesture over a timid one, a direct gaze over a declaration. Over time, your image changes. Over time, your presence speaks louder than any words. We have reached the end of this journey. Now the choice is yours. You can continue down the path of the majority, always justifying yourself, always talking too much, always begging for respect. Or you can follow the path of the few who know how to transform silence into authority, presence into respect, and symbols into power. Those who choose the second path will never be ignored. If this content resonated with you, if you've ever found yourself in the situations described and realized how much you need to change, then you already know what to do. Put this reflection into action. Like this video, leave your comment, even anonymously, because every word you say strengthens this space. And subscribe to the channel. The next step is up to you. Respect is not demanded. Respect is demanded.